Morning television usually hums with dependable rhythm. Warm lights, steady smiles, coffee mugs steaming beneath studio glow. But on a recent broadcast of the fourth hour of Today, something shifted. There was a pause in the laughter, a tremble in the transition, a moment that felt less like programming and more like truth, cracking through polish. Jenna Bush Hager, now 44, leaned into vulnerability in a way that felt unscripted and unmistakably human. And at the center of it all was her longtime friend and colleague, Savannah Guthrie. What unfolded wasn't scandal. It wasn't spectacle. It was something rarer in live television, reflection. A reminder that behind the bright set and practiced timing are real women navigating pressure, loyalty, grief, ambition, and grace, often all at once. The weight of friendship in public view. Friendship in private life is complicated enough. Add cameras, headlines, and millions of viewers, and it becomes something far more delicate. Jenna spoke not in accusation, but in acknowledgement, about the invisible threads that bind colleagues who become confidants. She described Savannah not just as a co-anchor, but as an anchor in the truest sense of the word, steady when the waters feel unpredictable. Morning television thrives on chemistry, but authentic connection can't be manufactured. Over years of shared dressing rooms, commercial breaks, and whispered pep talks before going live, their bond deepened. The audience sees the polished version. What they don't always see are the quiet reassurances, the texts sent after tough interviews, or the way one subtly carries the conversation when the other needs a breath. That's the unseen architecture of partnership. Growing up. Under bright lights. For Jenna, public life began long before studio lights. As the daughter of former U.S. President George W. Bush and former First Lady Laura Bush, scrutiny wasn't optional. It was inherited. She has spoken candidly over the years about learning adulthood in front of headlines. Mistakes were magnified. Milestones were national news. But that upbringing also forged resilience. It taught her humor as armor and empathy as strength. By the time she stepped fully into television, she understood how public narratives form, and how often they miss the heart of the story. At 44, Jenna's evolution feels grounded. She carries legacy without being consumed by it. On air, her laughter feels lived in, not performative. The woman viewers see now is shaped not only by history, but by reflection. Savannah's quiet strength. Savannah's path unfolded differently, but carried its own intensity. Born in Australia and raised in Arizona, she built her career steadily through reporting, legal analysis, and anchor desks. By the time she became a leading voice on Today, she had already weathered demanding assignments and industry shifts. Her style has always been measured. Thoughtful, prepared, steady under pressure. But composure does not mean absence of feeling. Over the years, Savannah has shared glimpses of personal struggles, from health challenges to the emotional balancing act of motherhood and career. Faith and reflection anchor her publicly expressed worldview. In moments of national tension or breaking news, she becomes a calming presence. Off camera, those who know her often describe warmth and fierce loyalty. Strength, in her case, isn't loud, it's consistent. When colleagues become sisters, the transition from co-workers to something closer doesn't happen overnight. It happens in fragments, shared jokes no one else understands, side glances during awkward interviews, late-night messages before big broadcast days. Jenna and Savannah's dynamic evolved naturally over years of proximity and trust. Television partnerships can be transactional. Theirs feels personal. They've celebrated book launches, navigated parenting seasons, and quietly supported one another through private challenges. On air, that familiarity translates into ease, a shorthand that can't be scripted. Viewers respond to that authenticity. It feels like eavesdropping on friends rather than watching performers. And yet, with closeness comes complexity. When one grows, shifts, or struggles, the other feels the ripple. That's the part audiences rarely consider. emotional investment behind professional alignment. Friendship inside a high-profile workplace requires intention. Reinvention at midlife. Turning 44 isn't about crisis. It's about clarity. Jenna's recent reflections hinted at that transitional space, the reevaluation that comes when children grow older, careers stabilize, and identity expands beyond roles. She has increasingly spoken about creative autonomy, new projects, and evolving confidence. Reinvention doesn't mean rejection of the past, it means refinement. On the show, her energy carries both playfulness and purpose. She seems less concerned with proving herself and more focused on presence. That shift can subtly change dynamics. Growth in one person sometimes prompts reflection in another. Not conflict, simply awareness. In long friendships, especially public ones, seasons shift. What remains constant is respect. Jenna's openness felt less like revelation and more like acknowledgement that adulthood is ongoing. Even in familiar spaces, we continue becoming. The grace of vulnerability. Live television rarely allows room for rawness. Timing is tight. Segments are structured. Emotions are usually edited for neatness. Yet vulnerability, when it surfaces, resonates deeply. Jenna's voice carried tremor. Not for effect, but from sincerity. She spoke about gratitude and about imperfections, about moments of doubt and the relief of having someone who sees the unfiltered version. Vulnerability on that scale is risky. It invites interpretation, projection, even criticism. But it also builds trust. Viewers don't connect to perfection, they connect to humanity. Savannah, known for her composure, has had her own moments of visible emotion on air over the years. When anchors allow audiences to see beyond the script, it softens the boundary between screen and living room. It reminds us that even the most poised professionals carry private complexities. Media narratives versus real life. In the digital age, a pause becomes a headline. A glance becomes speculation. Social media thrives on amplification. But real relationships are rarely as dramatic as online commentary suggests. What viewers witnessed wasn't a rupture. It was reflection. Yet interpretation often runs ahead of intention. Public figures learn quickly that silence can be misread and candor dissected. The healthiest response isn't defensiveness, it's steadiness. Both Jenna and Savannah have navigated media cycles long enough to understand this rhythm. They know that attention flares and fades. What endures are lived connections, not trending hashtags. There is wisdom in allowing stories to breathe rather than reacting to every ripple. Sometimes the most powerful statement is simply continuing forward with authenticity intact. The strength behind the smiles. Morning television demands optimism, even on difficult days. Hosts arrive prepared to uplift, regardless of personal circumstances. That's part of the job. But behind those bright transitions are women juggling families, aging parents, health appointments, creative ambitions, and emotional fatigue. Jenna's reflections reminded viewers that resilience isn't the absence of struggle, it's movement through it. Savannah's career has long embodied composed perseverance. Together, they represent different expressions of strength, one expressive and spontaneous, the other measured and steady. Neither is more authentic. They simply reflect distinct personalities. When combined, that contrast creates balance. The audience benefits from both laughter and gravity, and perhaps that's the real story. Not tension, but complement. Not fracture, but formation through difference. Choosing truth over noise. At its heart, this moment wasn't about revelation. It was about choosing honesty over assumption. Jenna's words suggested gratitude more than grievance. She acknowledged growth, imperfection, and loyalty. That's not scandal. That's adulthood. In a culture quick to dramatize, quiet truth can feel almost radical. Savannah's steady presence throughout the years speaks to mutual respect that withstands speculation. Public partnerships evolve. as all relationships do. What matters is intention. From the outside, viewers see segments and smiles. From the inside, there are conversations, clarifications, and continued care. The story here isn't explosive, it's human. Two women navigating visibility while protecting what matters most. And maybe that's why it resonated. Not because it shocked, but because it felt real.